Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
We see it often. Sales leaders that send their team to training, but are too busy, important, delusional to get themselves trained. Our guest today contends that sales leadership training would increase the impact of sales training by a factor of 10. So hang on to your hats as Scott and I discuss training sales leaders with our guest, Steve Keating, in episode 498 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
Well, it's great having Steve on the show again. I think he was on episode 420, which was, seems like years ago, and a delightful interview, and we're really grateful to have him back. There is no book club today because we finished the book Sales Jiu-Jitsu, and we wanted to spend more time with our guests. Our next book will start next week, The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I think you'll find that to be a thick book, an intimidating book, but a very resourceful book. Part one of the book is entitled The Fundamentals of Success and contains 24 principles. For next week, we will read principles 1 through 5. Then Bill and I will pick 1 or 2 principles to discuss during the book club part of the show. But read the entire section, chapters 1 through 5, because you never know which one we're going to pick. And we might end up spilling over to other ones because our discussions seldomly stay on one track. And it is likely that we will mention some of the other principles in our conversations. So pick up a copy of The Success Principles by Jack Canfield and start reading today. This interview is being brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door by Steve Kloida.
I'm Ron Lehman, and I want to tell you about one of the best sales books I've ever read. The Art of Prospecting, your guide to get in the door, gives you the tools and techniques to fill your pipeline and achieve more sales success. The author is Steve Kloida, known as the prospecting expert, and this book proves it. So if you want to learn from the master, get The Art of Prospecting, your guide to get in the door. It's available at theprospectingexpert.com. Just click on the Buy Book button.
I am excited to have Steve Keating on the show. Steve and I have known each other for about 30 years. We worked together at Dale Carnegie Training back in the early 90s. And he has an amazing Twitter site, Lead Today, over 1 million followers. He was listed on LinkedIn's top 15 sales leaders and professionals to watch in 2019. Steve, I forgot to watch you in 2019. I should have watched you. But welcome to the show, Steve Keating.
Thank you, Bill. By the way, just for the record, I was much better looking in 2019 too. So
well, we all were. COVID had a bad effect on everybody. We stayed at home and got pale.
Yeah.
In more ways than one.
Well, leadership decided that being outside was bad for us. So that was a good decision. Don't get any sunshine. So anyway, Steve, you wanted to talk about the importance of sales leaders getting training. Why is that so important?
Well, I tell you what, I've been on a little bit of a kick on this subject for a while, as I was asked to come to a company and do a little bit of sales training for them. And I wanted to set clear objectives. And I asked the sales management team, what are some of the skill gaps of your team that you'd like to address? And they said, well, we want them to know that they need to grow their business and that they need to grow their business substantially, that they need to be making better call plans, and that they need to turn in their call reports on time and keep their Salesforce database up to par. And I said, okay, well, that's all interesting, but I hope you don't take offense to this, but it sounds to me like you're asking me to do your job, because those are the kinds of things that you should be having regular conversations with your team about. And they said, well, yeah, but we'd like them to hear it from you. And I said, well, here's the thing. I think I'm pretty good with sales training. I've been in sales a long time, done lots and lots of sales training. And I can come down and work with your team and plant the seeds, but you're going to need to water the plants.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to need to reinforce, and most important of all, hold your people accountable to the changes that we ask them to commit to during the training. And frankly, I will tell you, if you're not up for that, then I'll still come down and do the training, but you're not going to get anywhere near the impact you would otherwise.
Yeah.
Are you up for that? And they waffled. They weren't sure they had the time to do that.
Right. Right. What are they doing with their time? And that was one of the questions I thought is what are they spending their time doing if they're not guiding them and not reinforcing? What did you have that discussion with them?
Yeah. So here's the challenge for a sales manager. Most people in the position of sales manager got that position because they were a really good salesperson. Mm-hmm. And so for whatever reason, the sales manager retired, moved on to greener pastures, whatever, wasn't very productive. You were promoted into the sales manager role and told to get going, kick him in the butt, get him moving.
Go get him, Tiger.
Yeah. And
make him do what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that's what most of them will do is they'll have them do what they were doing when they were in the territory, or at least tell them that's what they should be doing. And if they had a good sales manager, maybe they'll emulate that. But if they had a bad sales manager, they'll emulate that as well.
Right.
So think about this. A guy might have got fired because he was a crappy sales manager, but he was your model of sales management. So you're going to foist the same crappy sales management onto your team that was foisted on you when you were on the sales team.
Unless
you
learn something different, right?
Yeah, but here's the challenge: not just sales management, but in management in general, in people who hold leadership positions, people who are promoted into leadership positions. I think the research says now somewhere between 70 and 80% of those individuals have less than an hour of formal leadership training in their careers.
Oh my!
Wow,
which is scary to me. And so a typical sales manager will, as they were promoted to sales management and told to manage that team, nobody ever said a word to them about leading the team. And so they manage. They spend their days looking at data, which is appropriate function for a sales manager. They spend their time dividing up territories and figuring out compensation plans and maybe managing the equipment and making sure they have the right technology and doing all that stuff. But here's the point I try to make when I do leadership training is we manage stuff. People must be led.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Managed people are people who almost instinctively veer off from the track set down by a manager. Most of the personnel issues that a sales manager would claim to have come about as a direct result of trying to manage another human being rather than lead them. And I encourage people new into a sales management role to stop using that word for starters and say, I've got two functions now. I've got the sales management role about stuff, but I also have a sales leadership role about my people. And I can sustain the business doing sales management stuff. Growth, and especially explosive growth, only comes from leading the people.
One of the things that we just heard a lot in this last book we read, I don't know if you've read Sales Jiu-Jitsu, but anyway, one of the things that one of the authors expressed over and over again was 2 hours of training with his team every week.
Yep.
Every week, going over scripts, going over ideas, challenging each other, taking an example and running through it with a partner and challenging each other. And I thought that was a great idea. I don't think enough sales leaders have a constant ongoing process to get their people better.
I would say that the vast majority do not. And what you just described there, Bill, to me is excellent sales coaching. And one of the things that I tell people, if somebody was new in a sales management role and they asked for advice, I think that the clearest advice I could give them was be the sales coach that you wish you had when you were in sales. You know what the shortcomings were and what would have made you a more effective sales professional. Be that guy. Be that person. Help them. And if you don't have time to do that, then frankly, you don't have time to be in a sales leadership role.
Is part of the challenge that sales leaders are facing that they're their bosses don't understand what they should be doing, and so they're asking for all kinds of reports all the time, and they want all kinds of data from the CRM, and the CRMs become the master to everybody. And you and I've had this CRM talk before, is who are we doing this for? And it seems that everybody wants data, but the salespeople don't get any value out of the data.
Well, here's the thing. I don't believe that salespeople should be doing anything during their day that doesn't in one way, shape, or form bring value to a customer. And I still remember having this discussion with a group of marketing people who wanted to take the CRM, and they had a list of, I can't remember what the exact number was, but 35 or 40 different things they wanted the salespeople to learn from their customers and populate it into the Salesforce, into the CRM, so that the marketing guys could mine that data. And I said, so what does the customer get out of that?
Right.
Well, we'll be able to market to them better. And it's like, what does the customer get out of that? Because that's not customer focused at all. A CRM tool to me, it should be something that provides value to a customer. I can come in on my second call and pick up where we left off. I have a record of what your issues were and your concerns and how we might have helped you in the past and what your goals and objectives are. That's the data that helps a customer. If it tells a salesperson, geez, you know what? I haven't gone in to see Charlie in 3 weeks. My plan was to see him every week. I got to get in there. That's how it helps a salesperson. And I'm a big believer in data-driven direction. Don't get me wrong, but the data, as you say, Bill, can't be the master. It's a great tool for salespeople and for sales leaders to hold salespeople accountable to make sure they're making the calls and seeing the right people. But the information that we can mine out of a CRM should be additive. It shouldn't be the holy grail of our activities.
Well, not only that, but if I'm taking half my day to put data into the CRM, that's half of my day that I can't be seeing customers or calling them or talking to them.
Yep. So I believe in a concept called money hours, and the money hours are the time when a salesperson can be face to face with a customer. Mm-hmm. And if we're entering data in a CRM during money hours, we're not being very productive at that point. To use a CRM well for a salesperson, I go in and make that call, and I enter my notes in immediately after that call into the CRM. And if it takes me more than 5 or 10 minutes, I got a problem.
Right.
And so that's how I would use a CRM. But here's the other thing. I remember years ago, I was working with a sales team, and I'm riding with them in their trucks. And on Friday, I meet with the sales manager to talk about how the week went. And he says, well, what do you think? And it's like, well, I spotted one gigantic problem with all 5 of the salespeople that I rode with. And he said, what's that? And I said, well, I can't really explain it. I need to show it to you. Let's go out. And the last sales guy I rode with that morning, his truck was still in the parking lot. And I said, let's go around to the passenger side. I said, open up the door and look into this truck. And what do you see? And he goes, I don't know. It looks, this is one of our older trucks that's getting ready to be replaced, but it looks like one of our trucks. And I said, do you notice the difference between the driver's side and the passenger side? And he goes, well, the driver's side is well worn. That's what we're looking for. The passenger side is almost new. And I said, no, the passenger side looks brand new. It looks brand new. This is a 5-year-old truck. That passenger side looks brand new. And that's a huge problem. And he says, I don't know what you're getting at. I says, that's your seat. That's the seat you should have been in for the last 5 years, riding with and coaching and helping your people develop. You can look at a CRM, you can look at data, you can look at maps, you can do research online, you can do all of that stuff, but you're not maximizing your ability to help a salesperson if you're not out there with them. You can't see the territories from behind your desk. You need to be with them to coach them, to make them feel as though you're part of their support system. You can't do that from behind a desk.
Right.
Says, you need to wear the heck out of these seats, man. You got to get out there. And I would say that to any sales leader who thinks they know what's going on out in the real world from behind their desk. you gotta get out of the office and work with your teams to really be able to coach them and lead them rather than manage them.
As you've been trying to promote this training of sales leaders, I'm sure you've had some luck with that. What are you finding is the challenge that they face?
So there's a whole lot, and I guess it's because they've come largely from the ranks of the sales team. There's a whole lot of them that put maybe too much importance on being liked, being popular. They mistake leadership as a popularity contest, and I certainly, am not encouraging to be adversarial or anything. It's great when you really have a good bond with your salespeople, but so many of them are so worried about that they don't want to hold their people accountable. They don't want to risk a confrontational conversation with their people about their results, about their development, and so they don't. They get frustrated, but they put it off to the side. The Minnesota Timberwolves had a basketball coach. Actually, the Minnesota Timberwolves had like 100 basketball coaches, but,
and none of them too successful yet.
That's indeed true. But one of them was named Sidney Lowe, and Sidney Lowe was a great X's and O's basketball coach. He knew the game in and out. He was just a genius guy like that. But he would watch his players go through practice and make mistakes, and he'd just get frustrated, but he wouldn't say anything. And then they would make those same mistakes in a game, which would result in a loss. And then Sidney's incredibly frustrated with that. And they would, get halfway through the season, and finally Sidney couldn't take it anymore, and he would just explode. And it'd be like, back on October 11th, at 6:18 of the second quarter, you screwed this up, and you've done it every game since. And the players are like, geez, well, why didn't you say something a little bit sooner? And Sidney did say something sooner because he was avoiding what he thought was a confrontation or conflict. And so he missed multiple opportunities to help his players and his team grow. And eventually he became so frustrated and his team so gun shy because even the guys that didn't get screamed at on the sideline were waiting for their turn to get screamed at, that the morale of the team just went south and they had no hope to win. That happens in sales organizations all the time as well, because the best sales leaders are not just coaches, but they're consistent coaches. Yeah. And they're compassionate in their conversations, so that so many people think that holding people accountable is confrontational, it causes conflict. But if you're demonstrating as a leader that you care for your people and you want to help them succeed, then that coaching never has to become adversarial or confrontational.
Steve, let me jump in here and kind of propose something that I've seen when working with sales team along the same lines. Is like you said, the sales manager gets promoted because they're really good at sales. Now they're in that sales leadership chair. And you look at some of the ways that they manage the process or lead the salespeople. And when it comes to the coaching and the ride-alongs, I think you bring up a really good point. And it was, you had me going. I didn't see what the problem was until you mentioned that the seat's brand new. Nobody's ever sat in it before. And it seems like some of these sales managers think about what it was like to be a salesperson and some of the things that they did not like about their sales manager. So they get it to be a manager and they go, well, I'm never going to do that to my salespeople. So I'm never going to be on ride-alongs with them. Or here's another thing that salespeople really, really dislike. It's role playing. But role playing is so effective because you're going through the actions and you're going through the role that you're playing and all of the possible outcomes and all the options and all the opportunities that are presented to the salesperson. And usually it's a salesperson that's not listening to the other side when they're doing a role playing, and then that's brought out during the role playing, but then they cut role playing out. And every time I do a full day session, 2 hours, the last 2 hours is done on role playing. It's the application of all the content that we've presented and they learned, and now they've got to apply it in order to incorporate it and internalize. And if they don't do that, then they're just going to close their notebooks. They're going to go back to the office and start the new day with the same behaviors they did yesterday. Yep. And they always say, I hate role playing. And I go, well, let's go through it and let's do it. We spend 2 hours doing role playing. And I cut them off and I say, did you hear that? what other ways could you have said that or asked that question? Or how come you didn't ask this question? And at the end of the session, and I do a lessons learned, I go, well, what did you guys like most about today? And they go, wow, I really love the role playing. I'm like, you guys are, driving me crazy here. You hate the role playing at the beginning, then you do the role playing, and then you love the role playing. But it's so important, I think, for the application of the content when you're in a leadership role, a training and development role, for the salespeople to be able to get a chance in a very safe environment. It's an environment of learning as role playing when you're doing a training session, and the salespeople get a chance to apply what they've learned, and their interpretation of the content and the application of the timing is so important. Have you found that to be true, or any other ways you can elaborate on that?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true, Scott. As Bill can attest to, back in my Dale Carnegie days, the Dale Carnegie people loved role plays. And I remember one time coming into the office, and Selling Power had just published an article about how many salespeople don't formally ask for the order. Over 90% of salespeople conclude a sales call and don't actually ask for the order. And so our sales manager says to me, he says, well, do you always ask for the order? And I'm in the hallway in the Carnegie office in Edina, Minnesota. And I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. I always ask for the order. And he says, really? Well, show me how you do it. Let's role play. And it's like, this is embarrassing. I'm in the office and people are going by and, let's role play. And it's like, okay. And he says, well, go ahead. Ask me your best order asking question. And I said, all right. So what do you think? And he says, well, I think it'll be great when you ask me an order asking question.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so you'll let me know? And he says, yeah, I'll let you know as soon as you ask an order asking question. And the point was driven home that, you know what, an order asking question is a yes or no. Let me know is not an order asking question. And I learned that through that little role play exercise. And it's interesting when I think about the purpose of role plays and how a sales leader can help their salespeople. I go back to the story I read about the number one recorded song in the history of music. You guys know what that is?
No.
Yesterday by the Beatles. Number one recorded song in history. And Frank Sinatra recorded that song 7 times. And he said, there was very little difference between the first recording and the 7th recording, but the 7th recording was the one we released because it just didn't feel right to me until I'd said it a few times, until it had rolled off my tongue a few times.
Wow.
And that's the benefit of role play.
Yeah.
Is a new concept that a salesperson is not comfortable with. That practice, that out loud practice, can really help them be comfortable with it. I never recommend practicing in front of a customer. So, but
most salespeople do.
Yeah, absolutely.
They do it all the time. Every day they practice in front of the customer.
Yep. But a great sales leader can help their salespeople through that kind of role play. And you're right. They didn't like it when they were a salesperson, so they're not going to put their salespeople through that. But your job as a sales leader is to help your people reach their potential. You're great, and somebody a lot smarter than me said this. I don't remember who it was, but a great leader will help ordinary people achieve extraordinary results, and that's part of the role of a leader. And sometimes you have to help your people get past their, I don't know, is this a word, uncomfortableness, to grow. Yeah. And so many sales leaders, we ride along, we commiserate with our salespeople about that last, knucklehead customer that didn't know what they were doing. And then we have lunch and, we say, well, it was a great day. You did a good job. If you need anything, you let me know. I'm here for you. And that's the ride along. And then you ask the sales leader at the end of that day, so what's going to change based on your activity out in the field with that salesperson? What are they going to be doing different tomorrow as a result of your being with them today? Mm-hmm. And you get crickets.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to what you talked about with the Sidney Lowe example. And I think this is true for most leaders, not just sales leaders. because most of them get promoted past their level of competence. And that is this challenge of not wanting to get people mad at us.
Yep.
So they never learn how to challenge people in a way that's positive. As your Sydney Lowe example, we wait and wait and wait until all we can do is explode, and then it's negative. And they go, see, every time I do it, it's negative. Instead of challenging people in a right way and holding them accountable to what they said they were going to do. I mean, that's really the core of focusing on people, is to say, well, you told me you were going to make 20 phone calls every week and you didn't. Tell me why. You don't have to get mad about it. You just have to ask them.
Yep.
But if you wait until it's been 10 weeks and they've made 2 phone calls and now you're all mad and now you have to confront, well, of course, it's a negative example. It's a negative experience. Same with role playing, the same with challenging them after a sale. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to, every time we say, let's try this role play, everybody goes, I don't want to do it. So we go, okay, we won't do it.
Yep.
What kind of leadership is that? Just giving into the lowest common denominator, and that's not going to help you or them.
Yeah, the challenge with that, Bill, when you don't have that regular communication and you let things build up, it does become a negative experience for them. And I try to help the people in sales leadership positions understand that the greatest tool they have in the development of their people is their own ability to communicate with them. And instead of telling them, you made a mistake, it's a Dale Carnegie principle, make the fault seem easy to correct. Don't tell a person they're wrong. So don't tell them they're wrong. Say, well, you know what? Why did you do it that way? Why did you ask that question? And many times the answer will be, I don't know. I've always done it like that. And say, well, have you ever considered this,
right,
or this or this? And what the outcome might be if you changed up that type of question a little bit. And that's good, solid coaching, instead of just telling them, you screwed up that call. You should have done this.
Or you don't even say you should have done this. You just say, well, you screwed up that call. Do better.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
So,
I think anybody who's been in sales a while has had a sales manager that's given them that coaching. You got to do better.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Well, better. Look it up.
well, it reminds me of the old story from the 1 Minute Manager about bowling with the sheet in front of it, and your manager's down at the end going, you got 2, you got 4, do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example. That really is.
Or basketball without a hoop. Well, try harder. It's just, if I don't have good goals, if I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, if I'm not being held accountable to those, then of course I never know if I'm doing well, and I can't judge it against anything. But do you find that many managers don't even want to make goals that are anything but sales goals? Scott and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
What are your activity goals that turn into sales? Don't tell me about you do $1 million a year and that's all you tell me. Give me something along the way that I can judge.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in coaching activities. If we coach the right activities, we know what the results will be. And if you study salespeople and you ride with salespeople and you watch their daily activities, you can tell why they're falling short of their goals. I can't remember. One of the guys that I do some work with has some research that shows somewhere close to 70% of salespeople nationally fail to achieve their goals on an annual basis.
Wow.
And it isn't because their product sucks. It isn't because the price is too high or the customers are unwilling. It's because their focus is on the wrong activities. And, if we coach the right activities, the results will come. But, we're not paid on activities. Salespeople are paid on the results. And so that tends to cause the sales managers to focus on results. A sales leader will spend much more time focused on coaching the right activities, confident that the results will come. But that requires some growth in the role to be able to do that, and some confidence in yourself. And here's maybe the real issue, is that a lot of people promoted from a sales role into a sales management role lack the confidence to actually convert from and move in and out from manager to leader. Just don't have the confidence to do it.
Right. Right. Hey, before we're closing in on our time right now, and I know Scott had a question from one of our listeners that he wanted to run by you. So
Okay.
Yeah. One of our loyal listeners sent in a question, and the question is: a few years ago, I've been very successful, and I anticipate that things will be successful in 2022. One red flag that I see in myself is that I'm falling into habits of achieving high levels of success through mostly reactive activities.
Yep.
I can probably sustain a short-term success on this approach, but I'm worried that I'm developing bad habits and it will come back to bite me, especially when the recession hits. What do you guys think I should continue to do with proactive activities when things are good enough for you to succeed on mostly reactive? So it's really a battle between things are going great, being reactive, but you can't always stay there, and you got to be more in charge of your time and how you trade your time and being proactive. Any advice on dealing with somebody that's kind of in that state?
So there were two words you used there that are really key to me to coach this person, and you said good enough.
Oh yeah,
good enough. Good enough is never good enough. If we're in sales and we settle for good enough, sooner or later, good enough is not going to be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get that from salespeople a lot. It's like, why are you bugging me? I'm making my numbers and I'm growing 2 or 3% a year. Why are you hassling me over? I need more and more and more. You're never satisfied. You always need more. Well, here's the thing. I don't look at what the sales growth was so much as what I look at what the opportunity was. And if the opportunity says you should be able to grow 15% a year and you're growing 2% a year, that's not good enough. It might be good enough to keep your job, but it's not good enough to grow an organization. And so, I would look at what activities, and maybe you got to look back at your calendar for a couple of years and say, what was I doing that was successful that I've stopped doing now? How many times a day am I interacting with customers, or I'm out in my territory? Am I interacting with my sales team if I'm a sales manager? Am I uncomfortable? Because if you go through a day and you're completely comfortable, then you're not growing.
Right.
And that's not good enough.
I think it goes back to what we were just talking about. Don't judge yourself on your final numbers. Judge yourself on your activity goals and see if you're doing the right things, being proactive, as he mentioned, rather than just you get a great call and you get all your monthly numbers in one phone call. Yeah,
absolutely. I would make certain too that if I felt I was developing some bad habits and I was getting kind of stale, that I would put something in my daily plan that I knew was going to make me uncomfortable, and I put it very high on my priority list to accomplish that thing. And that's a good way for any individual, I think, to push themselves a little bit out of that staleness and that comfort zone.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, good advice.
So one last piece of advice you'd give to sales leaders. What should they do about this conundrum of not being really good leaders?
If I asked you what your greatest asset was, you would likely tell me your sales team. But I would also remind you that ultimately, as a sales manager or a sales leader, your success is completely dependent upon the success of your sales team. If you're not willing to invest some of your time in developing yourself so that you can develop them, then you're not only holding yourself back, you're holding your own organization back. There's tons of great TED Talks, online training for sales leadership or leadership in general. Don't wait for your company to invest in you. Invest in yourself so you can grow your people. You owe it to them. You have the audacity to call yourself a leader, then lead.
Yeah, excellent. Any way people want to get hold of you? Any resources that you want to offer our listeners?
Couple of ways. You can always reach me through my website. You can just find my blog at stevekeating.me. Easy to get a hold of me there. You can also DM me on Twitter. The Twitter handle is at Lead Today.
We'll have that.
And by the way, I love talking about sales. I'm always available.
Great. Thanks, Steve. We'll have that on our webpage for this podcast. And then Scott, anything for you today?
No, I really enjoyed listening to Steve. And one thing that I'd like to submit when, I work with leaders is to really follow some of Steve's advice as to what to do. So you give them kind of, you need to get in front of more people, how to do it, which means that you need to make more phone calls, call higher up in an organization, have deeper conversations, etc. And then when to do it. And when you really think about what, how, and when, you're really approaching the training and development, as I've been told that I deliver a 3D approach to printing, not printing, I mean 3D approach to training. And it's what, how, and when. And I think if leaders follow that, they'd be able to get some great results out of their sales team.
All right, super. And then I've got a presentation offer. I'm doing my presentation, Finding Your Spark of Courage. I have one more slot available for your sales team or organization. If you're in the Twin Cities, I'll do it in person. Otherwise, I'll be glad to do it via Zoom. 40-minute presentation, and I think your team will find a great way to overcome some of their challenges that they face.
Yeah, great offer.
Thanks, Steve, again for being on the podcast with us today.
You bet. Thanks, you guys.
Our golden nugget today is a quote. Creativity comes from the conflict of ideas, from Donatella Versace, which is the sister of Gianni Versace, who was killed many years ago.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting. Steve talks so much about leaders that are scared of conflict, right? Yeah. And of course, we hear our college students today, they can't even hear a conflicting idea without needing to find a safe space and pet a dog.
Yeah.
So I think anybody that can deal with conflict is going to put themselves heads and shoulders above the people who don't know how to deal with conflict.
Yeah, so true.
Well, if you want to get any of these great ideas, get Steve's contact information, go to winningatselling.com, and all of our information will be in the show notes.
Next week, we're going to be covering chapters 1 through 5 of the principles from the book Success Principles by Jack Canfield. So read principles 1 through 5. And our topic is going to be on practicing forgiveness.
Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.